because we want to stay in our comfort zone. We want to do a one-arm swing when we don't even have a two-hand swing down pat yet. And we're going to go light. We actually engineer bad habits. We actually teach our body how to do things shittily, as I like to say. We teach things how to do things safely. But when it comes to kettlebells, you can quote me on this.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Well, that is the story of human progress.
1 inch at a time.
I'm your host, Joe DiStefano, and you're listening to Stack. In today's episode, I throw part 2 of my solo kettlebell episode at you, where we wrap up and we kind of take it from those initial few exercises like the goblet squat and the get up and understanding how important carries are. And now we go into the swing, the press, and the snatch, which are just some of my favorite exercises, and the exercises that I think if we did nothing but these 5 or 6 exercises for the rest of our life, we would be happy, fit, injury-free, durable, mindful, and have plenty of free time to do the things that we love to do, to spend time with our families, to nourish ourselves with amazing foods, to cook and to learn and to paint and do whatever you want, because fitness does not have to be complicated. I hope that's one of the messages you're taking from these solo episodes and this podcast in general. There's very simple things that go a long way, and I think we get so distracted when it comes to fitness, and I really hope you guys take these solo episodes and run with them and start training with a kettlebell at home in your front yard with your shoes off in the sun and just see your health and fitness just go to the moon. And if there's any way I can help, just let me know by heading over to my website, coachjodi.com/coaching. I have all sorts of ways to work together. If there's anything I can offer you, from supplements to nutrition to kettlebell training, whatever it might be, just let me know. And I hope you enjoyed today's part 2 of my solo kettlebell special. Before we dive into the episode, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friends at Traeger Grills. Now is the time to be focused on ourselves, our family, our friends, and definitely flavor. I'm telling you guys, being quarantined in Luxembourg right now, it's got its pros, but its biggest con, and the biggest thing that I miss about my house in LA is my Traeger grill and being able to walk right outside and throw amazing cuts of meat on this incredible powerhouse of a grill. And I can tell you for a fact that right now, if I were home, I'd be practicing some of those longer cooks that maybe I wouldn't have been home for 8 hours to cook, like ribs or maybe some beef brisket. I'm telling you guys, these grills are absolutely amazing, and the technology that they call Wi-Fi is second to none. It can make an amazing chef out of any rookie backyard cook. And to check out some ridiculously amazing looking steaks and recipes and things that have been cooked on Traeger grills, check them out on Instagram at Traeger, that's Traeger grills. And you can check out their website, traegergrills.com/stacked, for some special offers and to learn more and about how you can create some incredibly flavorful moments for your friends and family, especially when you can start having them all back over to your house again. Now, enjoy today's show.
All right, guys. Well, hey, welcome back to this episode where I'm sharing with you everything you need to know about the exercises that are going to help you get fit at home and at the same time live long, live strong, live injury-free, pain-free, feeling good, chasing your kids, whatever. There's so much convolution in the fitness space that we think we need so much more than we really do. And I hope that in part 1 of this episode, you took away just the potential for these really simple exercises to not only make us strong, but to knit us back together and get us back to our natural roots. Because we've come so far, and balancing on one leg on some kind of strange device, touching your nose, patting your belly, rubbing the top of your head and pressing a kettlebell is just not the way to get fit. And if you're learning a new exercise every workout, then you're doing just that. You're learning exercises. You're not getting fit, because strength, especially as it relates to injury prevention, longevity, and strength, is the body knowing, having neuromuscular knowing, neuromuscular efficiency. And what that comes down to is having the basics built strong. Because when the body has extreme confidence, not just a little confidence, but extreme confidence in the basics, it has a good grasp on a groundedness and a good grasp on its potential and its limits. But when we're constantly feeding it new information, it doesn't know the limits, all right? And you're constantly outside your comfort zone. So you're not building a lot of confidence, and strength requires confidence. In the article that I referenced quite a bit in part 1, the number 1 exercise you should be doing, I talk about how strength is a physiological score. It is not necessarily the dividends of the amount of bicep curls you did in the gym, which is why it depreciates a lot faster in someone that's sick than someone that just doesn't work out. And as we age, we lose what? The ability to go up and down stairs first. We get slower. So strength is a physiological score. And that score, yes, it relates to our confidence, our breath, our happiness, our purpose, our emotions. But it really depends on the foundation built. And that foundation comes from the exercise that I just told you about in part 1 of this show, which are the get up, the goblet squat, and the gold standard of rehab, prehab, or performance loaded carries. And not just 10 meters across the gym, but 10 minutes around your neighborhood. Now, in today's show, I wanted to dive into what I feel are the next step of exercises with kettlebells that you can do at home, hopefully outside with bare feet in the sun. And these are, there's a grind in here, the military press or the strict press or the overhead press. But the other two, the swing and the snatch, are ballistics. So one thing you'll notice about kettlebells, there's generally 2 types of exercises, and that's grinding movements, such as the get up, the goblet squat, or the press, and ballistic movements, such as the swing, the clean, the snatch, the jerk. So there's really 2 camps of exercises. The grinds knit the body together. They teach the body how to function at a higher level. They build a foundation. They allow the body to learn what it's capable of from a structural standpoint. The ballistics add fitness to that foundation. The ballistics say, you built the base, you built Giza, not Pisa. Now let me see what it can do on the track. Now let me see how much fitness I can get out of that foundation of integrity and strength. And that is kettlebell training. It's foundations, it's strength, it's raw, and then you pile on ballistics, which actually burn calories, burn fat, get your heart rate up, improve performance, improve efficiency, allow for higher performance. So I think I'm going to start part 2 with the press because it's the next grind in line. I didn't put the press in part 1 because I think people need to build a foundation for the press because, first of all, a lot of people have a lot of dysfunctional respiratory patterns and breathing patterns that allow or create tension and micro trauma in the shoulder. So a lot of people are not ready for pressing. Secondly, the carries teach the positions of the press. So I don't press people right away unless I know they're cool and strong and functional. But when we do the carries for a month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the person, you're teaching the body the end and beginning ranges of the press. So the rack carry is the start to the press. The overhead carry is the finish to the press. And exactly like I told you about with the pull-up and the chin-up, I like dead hangs prior to chin-ups because I want to expose the body to the range of motion we're dealing with, and I want it to be strong and connected connected and, quote, knit together at that range. So when we do a lot of carries, we're learning to press. We know the beginning, we know the end. What happens in between, the body is amazing at. If you, at any moment, at any exercise, teach the body the beginning and the end, it'll fill in the difference better than you can hope to teach it. And the best example of that is the goblet squat. So a lot of people kind of suck at squats. Like I said, if you suck at squats, you can elevate your heels a little bit and give yourself a mechanical advantage. But the goblet squat allows people to descend into the squat more deeply and more comfortably than they can often do without a weight. And that's because of the core activation and shift in center of mass that the weight provides. Now, that center of mass shift, that core activation gets you into the squat. But when you're in, your body knows how to stand straight because you've been doing so many carries. Your body knows how to now get to the bottom of the squat, or like it or not, you're in it. So the body just has to fill in the difference. And when you stand out of the squat, you're teaching the body how to descend into the next rep. And this is the brilliance. Now you take the heel lift away, you even take the kettlebell away, and all of a sudden you can squat 100 times better than you used to be able to, because you put the body into a position where it had to learn. The body doesn't like to learn. It likes to figure out. And that's what kettlebells are doing. And by the way, one of the things, and hopefully I'll probably get to this when I get to swings, but I'm just going to get to that when I get to swings. But the kettlebell is the teacher. You are not the teacher. And if you let that transcend and guide your kettlebell training, you're going to get really, really, really fit. I tell the story a lot when I teach this stuff live in person at workshops or seminars, that every kettlebell used to be 100 pounds. And if you wanted to be a strong man or woman, you got a kettlebell and it weighed 100 pounds. And that kettlebell taught you real quick how to respect it and move it. And you didn't have the option of going light and doing something wrong or learning a bad habit. There's no such thing as a bad habit with a 100-pound bell. Okay, so the kettlebell is the teacher. And when we're always tempted to go light because we want to stay in our comfort zone, we want to do a one-arm swing when we don't even have a two-hand swing down pat yet, and we're going to go light, we actually engineer bad habits. We actually teach our body how to do things shittily, as I like to say. We teach things how to do things safely. But when it comes to kettlebells, you can quote me on this, safe doesn't mean good. This is my perspective on a lot of the kettlebell training that happens at CrossFit, because the objective in CrossFit is the sport of fitness. It is not optimal movement pattern engineering and longevity and sustainability. And it's about moving weight, far ranges of motion in minimal time. And the fastest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So if you look at their swings, or heaven forbid, the snatches that happen in the gym, it's about getting it from the ground overhead as quickly as possible, not as biomechanically advantageously as possible, or biomechanically beneficially as possible. And what ends up happening is they quad the hell out of it. Quad dominant desk jockeys become even more quad dominant, but now they're even stronger at it. And to a certain extent, strength prevents injuries. But over time, that's the type of guy that's just going to throw his back out on the deadlift because he got his quads super strong, forgot about his ass, and now his back doesn't have any support. So, all right, getting back to the press. Now, the press is an essential kettlebell movement. It's an amazing movement. It's a great movement, but don't rush into it if you've got bad shoulders, you haven't lifted weights before, or you haven't done a ton of carries. When I talked about my perspective on mobility, and that I think improper breathing and respiratory patterns are actually the root of much of the neck, shoulder, hip, even knee pain. Because what happens is when we don't have torso stability, when the hub of our wheel, think about the hub cap or whatever of a tire is what's attached to the car. And then there's like that rubber wheel or tire around it. Well, if there's an issue in the axle or in the hub, what happens around the tire, if the tire ends up going flat or, wearing unevenly, like that's not the tire's fault. The damn axle's broken. And that's the reason why we have so much mobility deficits and problems. It's because of the patterns that happen at the hub, the respiratory system, the diaphragm, the transmission, so to speak. So we constantly do the equivalent of trying to fix that uneven wear pattern on the tire, even though it's the hub that's not riding smoothly. That's my hypothesis. So when we do a lot of carries, we teach the body how to stabilize. When we're weighted in rack or overhead position in particular, we don't have the option to breathe improperly. And across 5 to 10 minute periods of work, your body's like, oh crap, I better use this other thing. Then we're also teaching the body ranges of motion with the carries and with the get up. We're showing it how to be stable, because a lot of people that lack quality movement and stability, they're wobbly at the top of the press. They're wobbly when they start that overhead carry. They're wobbly when they start the get up. You don't want to be pressing into wobble zone again and again and again and again, okay? Because when you're in wobble zone, you're not using your muscular system efficiently. So you might as well, just like where this whole podcast started with the isometrics, you might as well show the body what proper position is and upload that software until it gets it. Then the body's really good at figuring out how to get there again and again and again for reps. Now, diving into the press, it's an absolutely essential position. This is a dynamic movement that should be built upon lots of carries and get-ups. Now, this extends the stack. So when we think about the straw analogy that I've been talking about now for 2 hours, don't kink the straw. When our spine is the primary straw, we don't crunch during something like the get up. We don't shift in something or side bend in something like a carry. And when we go overhead, again, from the side, if we're pressing properly, we cannot see our ear because our gigantic, enormous, ripply biceps are in the way. Now, when we go overhead and we're in a straight position, we're extending that spinal straw, which means the press is a core exercise. I'll repeat that. A press is a core exercise. It demands the stack beneath it be maximally awesome. It demands an optimal core. Otherwise, you're going to have the wobbles up at the top. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to lean back as you press overhead to basically reduce some of the range of motion and use more anterior fibers or use some of your chest or mitigate the need for proper core or proper rib position. So the press is an essential move. The press is a core exercise. I'll never forget when I took the RKC2. The first thing I had to do when I walked in the door was the snatch test, which we can talk about sometime, but not for today. I'll link to the show notes where I talk about how to train for that. But that's 124 kg snatches in under 5 minutes. I ended up walking into the RKC2 and doing it in 334, which I was stoked about. But anyways, right after that, I had to do the press. And I was pressing a 36 kg bell. And I believe I got it with my right, but you have to do it with both. And I went and it just didn't budge. And then the coach, his name's escaping me, but he said, tighten those gigantic quads of yours. And I squeezed my quads and it went straight up into the air. The press is a core exercise. The brain is incredibly smart. If you have a 36 kg bell in your hand, which is something like 80 pounds, and you want to extend the stack, you want to extend the straw, and you don't have your shit together down below, there is no way your brain is giving your deltoid and tricep and grip the strength to press an 80-pound bell over your head if it's not confident in what's happening at the feet, the knees, the hips, and the thoracic spine. So when I was having trouble with that 36 kg bell and the coach told me to tighten my damn quads, and as soon as I did, it went straight up in the air, I said to the brain, hey, I gotcha. You can't do it without a strong foundation. Here's your foundation, and whammo. So when we do the press, we talked about the plank being the top of the swing in the introduction to this podcast. So when we swing, it's relax, swing back between the legs, and contract everything real fast, real tight, real strong, and relax and contract. When we press, it's the exact same thing. We're not loosey-goosey. Once that bell is in position, we're engaged. But when we press, I'm squeezing the opposite lat. I'm squeezing my quads. I'm gripping the ground with my bare feet. I'm squeezing my butt. I'm squeezing my abs. And that bell is just going to fly right overhead. If you don't do that, you will be weak in the press and you will be uploading bad software. It's another reason why a lot of people believe that they need all sorts of different exercises, because they don't realize that just lifting a heavy bell over my head is a quad exercise, it's an ab exercise, it's a glute exercise, it's a breathing exercise, it's a thoracic spine mobility exercise, and it's a badassery exercise. So when you start to appreciate the foundations and the ingredients to a proper press, it's not somebody at boot camp throwing weight over their head for shits, giggles, sweaty, and sore, right? So the press is an essential position. It extends the stack. It extends the stack, which means rib position is everything. You'll see a lot of people open scissors. You'll see a lot of people's ribs flare when they start to press. That's what I talked about a minute ago. You don't want that. Keep the ribs down. Keep the abs tight. Keep the butt and quads tight, and press that thing to the sky. The press is an essential human position. This is why we have the ability to put our arm over our head. There was a doc from Harvard that suggested that nobody ever do anything overhead because it's too high risk of a position. And it's true that with great range of motion comes great responsibility. If you look at where people get injured, it's often what? The shoulder, because it is the maximal range of motion. It has the maximal range of motion of any joint in our body pretty much. I mean, you could make an argument for our neck and whatever, but the shoulder really has the ability to not only have the maximal range of motion of any joint in the body, but it also has a long lever. And when I talked about the get up, I talked about how when it's 1 inch that way or 1 inch this way, it magnifies the load. And if you don't believe me, grab a 12-kilo bell, hold it at your chest. Now try to hold it straight out in front of you. Yeah, it just got 10 times heavier. So the shoulder's got a lot of, neurological, there's a lot of responsibility that needs to be taken to anything with our shoulder, because it has such great responsibility, great range of motion. So we need to appreciate that. When we when we don't want to take that appreciation, maybe we should take that doc's advice and just never go overhead, because if we're not willing to put in the work to develop the stack, then shoulder activities can be a high-risk activity. The other problem with the shoulder is the fact that the 23 to 27,000 breaths per day that we all take, if your diaphragm's not functioning properly, you end up using rotator cuff, you use trap, you use scalene, you use all these muscles surrounding and near the shoulders, and then when you need them for something like the press, they're tired from 23,000 breaths. So now they're not stabilizing very well. They're trying to get someone else to do the work. The prime mover's saying, I'm big and strong, I'm going to push through the pain, no gain. And you end up fraying your labrum or tearing a rotator cuff, or being one of those guys that just has bad genetics and hurts their shoulders all the time. When I used to travel around teaching workshops, I taught in a lot of CrossFit gyms. And by the way, I love CrossFits. All my best friends in the world, most of them own CrossFits. I absolutely adore a lot of their programs and their objectives and how much they've helped people. But back in the day, it was pretty comical when everyone and their mother had a CrossFit gym. Anyways, I would go around. I taught 100 two-day workshops all around the globe in over 20 countries. And no matter where I was in the world, I would have a CrossFitter say, hey, I got this really weird shoulder pain. Can you help me? Because maybe they know that I've dislocated both my shoulders, torn both my shoulders, separated my collarbone on both ends, broke a couple ribs, fractured my skull. So they probably know I know what I'm talking about when it comes to rehab. And the lesson that they taught me is that you cannot fix a problem until you remove the source of the problem. They would ask me for help. I would say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to teach you how to breathe. We're going to teach you how to move. We're going to do some isometrics. And at some point throughout that 2-day weekend I spent with them, I would catch them doing muscle ups, kipping pull-ups, or barbell snatches. And none of that shit is good for your shoulders, especially once they're angry at you. All of those things can be a healthy part of a training program with great responsibility. and with great foundations built through the exercises I started this podcast off with. But okay, the press, essential, amazing for older adults if they have the health. It's important to start early because, again, shoulders and postures erode with time. But when you think about extending the stack, just like a handstand is an incredible core exercise. My mom now, she's in her late 60s, and she does a 3-minute headstand every day without touching the wall. Absolutely vital position being overhead. Now, I know she's doing a headstand and not a full handstand, but incredible, incredible stability. The handstand is an amazing. The wall handstand or wall walks is a great way to build your shoulders as well. But the kettlebell press is the gold standard, and it will knit your body together just like the other grinds. So, in summation, the grinds, the get up, the goblet squat, the carry, and the press, they are essentially tying the body together. All of these exercises require the utmost connectivity and integration of the upper body, the lower body, the left side of the body, the right side of the body, and the spiraling lines of fascia that connect our right foot to our left hand. You know, when we walk with our right foot, it's not a coincidence that your left arm swings with it. The body has all sorts of amazing connectedness that we need to reinforce and utilize. And this is why I cannot press a 100-pound kettlebell right now, but I can get up a 100-pound kettlebell. Why? Because my stack is stronger than my muscles. With kettlebells, you can become outrageously strong and resilient and durable far easier than you ever thought possible. Now, we're going to move on to the ballistics. Once you get strong, you can get powerful. The next two exercises that I want to discuss with all of you are the swing and the snatch. Now, when I first got into kettlebells 14 years ago, which is frightening, I was too in that camp where I wanted to teach people a different exercise all the time. You know, that's where everyone begins. And the snatch, I ended up just giving up on for a period of years. And the reason is because my general pop clients they would smash the back of their forearm. They would just generally kind of suck at it. I would see that they were putting their shoulder at higher risk than was worth it when we could just go a little bit heavier and do a one-arm swing, which they were great at. So there was a lot of reasons. But over time, especially as I became more involved with the RKC, I started to realize the magic of the kettlebell snatch and the athleticism that it can build and the aerobic capacity that it can build. So I became a believer. Now, the big difference between the swing and the snatch is that the swing is a hip-dominant ballistic. All kettlebell ballistics are hip-dominant, at least in the hard Russian Orthodox style. The kettlebell swing is a horizontal, hip-dominant ballistic that casts the bell forward. So, this is not the CrossFit American swing where you're trying to get the bell from the ground to overhead as quickly as humanly possible. Rather, the Russian hard style kettlebell swing that I teach, the objective is to swing the bell back between your legs and project it maximally forward. In fact, I used to teach this outdoors, and I've never had such great success teaching the kettlebell swing than when I shifted outdoors. And the reason was that I could tell people to actually throw the bell, not up, out. So if you think about the mechanics of this, the bell swings back, my shins stay tall. My shins stay vertical. Only the hip comes backwards, the knee bending only as much as it needs to deepen the ability of the hip hinge to close and crease. And then that hip projects forward. So you can imagine like the hip thrusting It's not throwing anything up. It's throwing it out. You imagine any hip thrust in any activity outside of kettlebells, it is going forward. It is not going up. So when we swing the bell, we have to maintain that ideal that we are projecting the bell forward. Now our job is to counteract that with not exaggerated, but proper scapular positioning. And I don't want to call it retraction, because then you get that person that looks like a bizarro, like their shoulders are kind of like squeezed together and they're kind of like robotic and not very athletic looking. The kettlebell swing is maximally athletic. And here's the cue. Keep the shoulders down, shins tall, hips back, then explosively forward as you project the bell forward and try to get as tall as you can through spinal extension and tension. Get tall. So a lot of times people finish, and guess what? Those knees at the very top of the rep still have a little bend in them. Maybe the hip isn't all the way through. Maybe the shoulders are projected forward. Maybe the back is a little round. Like when we talked about the high plank position, hard style plank, squeeze, 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 the top of the position is maximally tense. Quads, glutes, abs, lats. Okay? The shoulders are not projecting forward. The bell is not pulling you forward, but you are definitely not overcompensating by basically retracting your shoulders to the point that it looks like your head is coming forward. You are maximally erect, strong, stacked. Okay? Now, the swing is this amazing exercise, and we can work up to doing sets of whatever number you want. But most of the time when you're starting, you should not do more than 5 reps in a set. Because what happens is you do 3 well, and then they start to go poorly. So until you've done 100 reps for a couple of weeks each workout. So say you're swinging bells 3 days a week, do 100 swings each workout. That's 20 sets of 5. That becomes 10 sets of 10. That becomes, you see where I'm going with this, whatever math you want to do, 15 or 20 reps times 5 or 7. Do the math, whatever it ends up being, progressively work up, but start with 20 sets of 5 and really get them perfect. Visualize that bell projecting forward. Now, the snatch, I'm going to kind of jump back and forth and tennis these two because they're uniquely different but the same. The snatch is a swing. It's with one hand. The backswing is identical to the swing. The hip hinge, the tall shins. Just because the bell is going vertical does not mean that we squat the bell. So if we think about the CrossFit, quote, American swing, it is I've called it a 2-hand, 1-hand snatch because it looks more like a kettlebell snatch than a kettlebell swing because it ends up overhead, but they squat it. With the kettlebell hardstyle snatch, it is a swing just like the swing. It is a deep hip hinge. It is a horizontal. It begins with a horizontal projection of the bell. The difference is when we reach hip extension on the swing and we're going to throw it vertically, we need to redirect the bell, and we do that with the shoulder. We do that with the upper trap. We do that with the arm. And what I mean by that is when we do a one-arm swing, and again, the snatch is a progression from the swing. So you should swing for months and months and months before you start to learn the snatch. When we progress from the 2-hand swing to the one-arm swing to the one-arm snatch, it's a bit of a long road, but it's worth it. The difference with the snatch is we project the bell in that horizontal fashion just like it was a swing. But as the bell leaves beneath our bodies, we shrug the shoulder, which redirects the bell in the vertical direction. The bell becomes weightless. And when the bell becomes weightless and it's next to us, we vertically punch like we're pressing the lightest weight in the world as fast as possible. And it ends up seating itself on the back of the wrist perfectly and overhead. And you just whip that thing up there. Now, that is a highly athletic move, and why it's in my essential exercises, even though I said I gave up on it for a bunch of years, and then the RKC kicked my butt with it for a bunch of years. And then I came back to it when I started to really want to prep for the RKC 1 and 2 and really knock it out of the park. And again, I told you, and I didn't say it to brag, but I ended up completing the snatch test in 334, which for somebody under 200 pounds is pretty unheard of. And the reason is because I had done a ridiculous number of snatches at a low intensity and a lightweight to grease that pattern and to teach my body how to deal with it. Because when you throw a 22 to 24 kg bell over your head 100 times, it has the ability to really kick your butt, and not always in a good way, because 100 reps is a lot of reps. And unless you've done 10,000 reps, it's going to be hard to do 100 at maximal intensity. So my approach was turn the snatch into a ski machine, a rowing machine. Do it light so I can actually aerobically begin to throw weight around. Do it. I did it yesterday, just yesterday. My warm up was 200 unbroken snatches with a light, like I think it was 12 kilo weight. So I taught myself how to do this. And what I learned was I can build an outrageous amount of strength with the snatch aerobically, which means unlike even the swing, the snatch can become this sustained aerobic kettlebell exercise that builds incredible durability, strength, and power across long periods of time, even more than the swing. And I'll tell you why. It's because the relaxation, you actually get a little breaker at the top. When you're in that fully extended position, there's a second of rest, and the range of motion is longer. The relaxation period is actually a little bit longer. So even if you're throwing it up, the relaxation and pausing, there's a little bit more, which allows you to control your heart rate even better than high rep swings. It's a really, really magical exercise. And then with heavyweight, the snatch allows you to project maximal force between 2 feet into one arm, which is essentially any throwing sport. Any throwing sport is translating power from the ground through both legs into one arm. And that's an incredibly athletic maneuver. It's amazing for martial artists. It's amazing for almost everybody. So anyway, okay, back to the swing. You guys understand the difference now. As it relates to the swing comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. If somebody has a shoulder problem or not a lot of body awareness or is new to bells, I will start them with the kettlebell sumo deadlift. And what this is a non-ballistic swing. It's almost making a grind out of the swing. So the bell is not swinging, but the hip action is identical and it's happening slowly. Depending on the person, I will then take somebody through, I'll make them a double bell kettlebell sumo deadlifter. So they're getting a little bit more weight. This is helping them understand the pattern before we add ballistics. And then once they have a base of kettlebell deadlifts, sumo deadlifts, and double kettlebell deadlifts, we'll put both hands on one bell and begin to teach them the swing. And we'll do sets of 5 or less to begin with and progress to sets of 15 up to 25. And then once they're able to tolerate 100 reps per workout, you can go up to 3, 4, 500 reps a workout. The magic of the swing is this explosive hip extension, core contraction, quad tightening, lat tightening with relaxation on the backswing. So just like any, imagine a fighter in the ring, relax, maximal contract punch. Relax, maximal contract punch. A football player, it's relax to the line of scrimmage and go. This happens again and again and again in almost any sport. Look at a golfer, maximally relaxed, moment of impact, maximal tension, right? Well, maybe that's not true with golf, but you get what I'm saying. This is an incredibly athletic and neurologically efficient pattern to build, and teaches our body or reinforces how our body was designed to move athletically. It also builds an outrageous amount of fitness, durability, and gets your heart rate up so that you can actually get the benefits of running, or at least from an aerobic standpoint, the benefits of riding a bike with just enough kettlebell swings. There are people on the planet that never begin to kettlebell snatch. They will stay with the swing forever, and that is absolutely fine. My mom's not doing kettlebell swings, and it keeps me up at night. I'm going to definitely make that my ambition for the next year. I think this coronavirus stuff is just demonstrating that immunity, health, longevity is all one thing. It's all one piece. And I think that the kettlebell swing is just an amazing tool to maximize our health. Hey guys, what's happening? Sorry to interrupt. Wanted to give a shout out to my friends at Blue Blocks who helped me bring you today's show. These guys are making the highest quality blue blocking shades on the market. In fact, they're the only ones I know of that have been proven to block 100% of both blue and green light. This is essential while we're all on quarantine and maybe watching a little more TV or staring into some screens for a little bit longer hours or later into the evening than we normally would. These are the blue blockers you want to check out. And with code STACKED, you can save 15% on your entire order. Just head over to blueblocks.com, BLUBLOX.com, and check out this incredible selection of prescription and non-blue blocking shades for all of your eye needs. Now, back to the show. The important thing is understanding how this thing works. And that really starts with breath. Now, there's two types of breath in kettlebells. There's two types of real breathing in any exercise fitness routine, and that's anatomical and biomechanical. Now, if you read my book, Breathe Better, Move Better, that is all anatomical breathing. And what that means is when the body reaches extension. So if you guys all just took a big breath right now, your body's going to naturally, your chest is going to rise a little bit. Your spine is going to extend and become straight and erect. Now, if I said exhale that air as forcefully as you can, what happens? You flex. So taking anatomical breathing into exercise, as I often do with aerobic activities, including high rep snatching with very light weights, because I don't need any additional spinal stability. I don't feel my spine is at risk. This is the type of breathing that should take place during most core exercises. When I am extending, I'm inhaling. When I am flexing or closing, I am exhaling. Now that flies in the face of a lot of what we're taught, because we're taught mostly biomechanical breathing, and we're taught that biomechanical breathing is the only way to go when it comes to exercise, and it's simply not true. But awareness and experience in both camps is important. So let's see here. So if I was doing a underhand grip chin-up, anatomical breathing would be inhaling on the way down and exhaling on the way up. Why? Because on the way down, my body's achieving extension, and on the way up, my body is achieving flexion, okay? Now, the interesting thing is, if I'm doing a pull-up, is that the case? On a pull-up, I'm actually, when my hands are facing the other direction, it's actually the opposite. As I'm pulling, my body is reaching extension. So if my hands are overhand grips, I should actually inhale as I go up if I'm anatomically breathing, and exhale as I go down. How crazy is that? Same on like let's look at a high rep kettlebell snatch. And there's a video of this on my Instagram I can try to dig up and put in the show notes. Now, when I'm doing a 200 straight kettlebell snatch warm up with a lightweight weight, I'm often anatomically breathing. And what that means is I'm actually inhaling as the bell reaches its apex, and I'm exhaling as the bell flies down between my legs. And I'm doing that because the weight's light and I want to make it as aerobic as possible, and I want to reinforce my natural breathing rhythms. So that is natural breathing rhythms. When we do too much forced biomechanical breathing and we begin to think that that's the proper way to do even easy things, then we end up dysregulating our breath, and that causes nervous system frustration, stress, and angst and dysfunction, which is not wonderful. So let's pretend for a second I just did 200 straight lightweight kettlebell snatches with anatomical breathing, and then I walk over to my 100-pound kettlebell. I am not going to anatomically breathe with 100 pounds swinging between my legs. That's probably 1,000 pounds of work being done. So what am I going to do? I'm going to biomechanically breathe, which means I'm actually going to inhale and hold tension in my torso when my back is under stress. So breath is life. Breath is stability as well. So whenever we're going to pick something up that's really heavy, we should at least temporarily hold our breath. Because what it does is it creates a tourniquet. It creates, it's like adding support surrounding like a big balloon. Imagine your spine is this like delicate straw from my straw analogy. Imagine that straw. Now, with enough force, you can kink that straw, right? But what if you insulated that straw with a massive amount of, spray and foam or air pressure? Okay. So you can imagine the spine is basically in a balloon. That's our skin. And when I'm doing something easy, I can anatomically breathe because my spine doesn't need a ton of support. But when I'm going to pick up something maximally heavy that can definitely kink my straw, what I'm going to do is inhale, fill the balloon, and I'm going to hold it during the highest periods of tension throughout that movement. And I'm not going to breathe again until that tension's released. So as it relates to the kettlebell swing, I'm going to inhale as the weight comes down, okay? And as the weight is weightless, I'm going to inhale, okay? And now when I'm going to project the bell forward on the kettlebell swing and I'm going to get tight and tense and contracted, I'm going to hold. And then when the bell becomes weightless again at the top of the swing, I can do a quick exhale breath through my nose, or I can let a little bit of air out at the top of that swing when my hip reaches full extension right before I pull just the same amount of air in. Now with the swing, breathing can be complex. And just to reiterate, and hopefully this is clear, the bell is swinging, it's heavy, it's between my legs. I'm tense in the core and I'm holding my breath. As I extend my hip and therefore project the bell forward, when my hip reaches full extension and my quads, glutes, and abs all tighten at once, that's the moment I can let just a little bit of my air out. When the bell becomes weightless, which is at the apex of the swing, which is about horizontal in the Russian hardstyle swing. And by the way, if the bell is going up, you need to do more work to think about projecting it forward, maybe work out outside and begin to throw it, or just get a heavier weight. If the weight's too light and you're putting too much force in it, your arms are the lever and they tend to not go maximally horizontal, right? You run out and they begin to go vertical. So just go heavier if that's the case. But at the apex of the swing, which is about horizontal, the bell is actually going to become weightless, which is where kettlebell juggling comes in. If you've ever seen somebody like do a swing and at the top throw the bell in a circle, catch it again. So the bell has this weightless, this 0G for presence right at the top of the swing. And so what you're doing is as you reach extension, you're maintaining 80% of the tension in your trunk and torso and core. You're letting out that little bit of air just so you don't blow a gasket. And then during that moment of weightlessness, you can pull and replace that 20% of air that you let out. This is biomechanical breathing. This is artificial stability when we need it most, and breathing in a quick, controlled way on the exertion to keep us maximally safe. We do not biomechanically breathe when we're babysitting a kid. We don't biomechanically breathe when we're getting cereal from the top shelf of the fridge. We do not biomechanically breathe when we're stressed out. And this is what happens when we learn how to breathe in the gym and we think it's the way to breathe all the time. We end up bringing a lot of dysfunctional breathing into our daily life. And then you get into this chicken or the egg nervous system battle. Well, it's like, are you stressed out all the time because you breathe crummy, or do you breathe crummy because you're stressed out all the time? And that's a slippery slope, and who cares? Let's fix the breath. Let's do some relaxation, and let's understand what we're doing here. Again, the ebook Breathe Better, Move Better that I wrote last year goes into a lot of anatomical breathing. which I don't think a lot of people understand, but it's very simple. When the body is achieving extension, inhale. When it's achieving flexion, exhale. And the more activities you can do that reinforce it, which is that whole ebook, the better you're going to be. Now you're going to take the proper style of breathing and mechanical breathing. When you take the box of cereal off the top of the fridge, which, by the way, hopefully you don't eat cereal, or when you go to pick up your child, or you go to do an aerobic activity, or you go to a yoga class. And then when you're doing kettlebells and they're heavy and the risk is higher or the demand is higher, that's when you're going to artificially biomechanically breathe to give yourself that stability. So leading into the swing, start with sumo deadlifts. They are, if you never get beyond sumo deadlifts like my mom, that's fine. But you should hope to graduate to the swing. The swing is, you're not going to create that amount of pressure. Again, with a 53-pound bell swinging between your legs, you're creating more force than a 500-pound deadlift. So appreciate the value of the swings. I've got a great story where I didn't touch a barbell for 2 years, did nothing but kettlebells, walked in and set a PR for my front squat, which I think I did like 245 pounds on the bar, and hadn't touched a barbell in 2 years. So this stuff really works. When you progress, okay, there's two-hand swing, which is kind of the gold standard, what I really love people to do 300 times a week. And then you'll progress. And as you're preparing to shift into the snatch, you're going to want to learn two things. Number one is double bell swings. And the reason why double bell swings are important is because they expose inefficiency. It's like this like thing you do just to like see how you're doing. It's a little bit of a checkup. If you've got a great two-hand swing, but you can't do a double bell swing without losing yourself, then chances are you're not going to have a great one-arm swing. So I don't do a ton of double bell swings, but I do enough of them to basically calibrate my core and the independence of my limbs. The one-arm swing, a lot of people aren't very good at it, but basically, consider the one-hand swing, the one-arm swing. This is vital. It is the two-hand swing. Nothing is different. You just have one hand on the bell. But there shouldn't be like a bunch of rotation in the trunk. If somebody was looking from the side and you, as I do much of the time, were mirroring the kettlebell. So let's say the kettlebell is swinging in my right hand. I mirror. So my left hand actually meets it at the top of every swing and then comes out to the side when the loaded side comes between my legs, and then I meet it, okay? From the side, there's a good chance that somebody wouldn't be able to tell if I was doing a one-hand swing or a two-hand swing. Now, if that person sees my shoulders rotating toward them on every backswing, and my other arm is like just like Frankenstein or dead, it's going to be pretty obvious that I'm doing a one-arm swing, and that torque is not desirable. That torque is not great for the spine. In fact, the one-hand swing is a core exercise. It's a core exercise just like the overhead one-hand carry or the rack carry or the suitcase carry. We're creating a rotational force on the body so the body can resist it, not so the body can give into it. Okay? We're putting a rotational force on the body so that the core can resist it, not give into it. So if your kettlebell swing, one-arm swing, does not look like your two-hand swing with one arm or is causing the shoulders to rotate, that is no bueno. That is not what we want. And you should not snatch until you fix it. Now, how I think you should fix it? Heavy two-hand swings and probably more of them. So go a little bit above your standard weight. I've got an article about choosing weights for kettlebell swings, and what I call standard weight is based on your gender and your ability and your strength. You can figure out what is your standard weight. I will often take somebody that has a lousy one-hand swing, one-arm swing, and just have them do even heavier two-hand swings and then more double swings. And eventually they get it. Because a lot of times that rotation is just, you just haven't put your core to the test. Your core hasn't had to be integrated as well as it should be. And if you followed this program that I'm giving you on this podcast and you did a whole bunch of carries, a whole bunch of get-ups, a whole bunch of goblet squats, you're not going to have that problem. But I see it quite a bit. Um, okay, where was I? Heavy one arm swings above standard weight. All right, when you're learning how to do the one arm swing, which is important, and I don't know why we call it a two hand swing or a one arm swing. I don't know why it's not just like two arm or one hand. Um, when we're doing the one arm swing, if there's issues here, if you're having problems with it, a few of the things that I like to do besides the double bell swing and just heavier kettlebell swings, you can do things like suitcase deadlifts. You can do things like renegade rows. These are things that create a similar rotational stress on the body, but they're grinds. So if you're having a weakness in a one-sided ballistic, the solution is often not more ballistics. Because remember, ballistics are grinds at speed. Take the speed out of the equation. It's the same reason we don't run in minimalist shoes before we've walked in them, because the body can't learn when it's trying to survive. So do those things. But in addition, renegade rows, suitcase deadlifts, and if you have two equal, rather heavier kettlebells handy, alternating suitcase deadlifts coupled with renegade rows is like the fix. That is like the thing that will fix any rotational problems in one arm ballistics. Now, the one arm swing, the other thing, as you learn the snatch, you're going to have to master the one arm swing first. You can easily do 3 to 5 one arm swings left, 3 to 5 one arm swings right, then 10 two hand swings. You can do 25 two hand swings and occasionally take your left hand off and occasionally take your right hand off. You can switch hands every set, which is another way to calibrate that center line. So if you're having that rotational problem, you can actually switch hands every single rep, and that kind of gets you focused more on, on that midline as opposed to any rotation. Again, just like with the beginnings of the two-hand swing, when you're doing the one-hand swing, when you start doing a lot of reps, the reps tend to get worse if you're not careful. So build the foundation, rehabilitate with renegade rows and suitcase deadlifts and stuff like that. Do double bell swings, do hand-to-hand swings, and do heavy swings. Heavy swings are incredible. They are my favorite thing, and I have trouble getting athletes believing in them sometimes because they don't think it's necessary to swing 100 pounds, because it's like, feels like awkward and it's like pulling my body all over the place. But the kettlebell is the teacher. You can't teach a kettlebell as much as a kettlebell can teach you. The thing about the 100-pound kettlebell is it demands respect and proper technique. If you don't swing that bastard properly, it's going to swing you. And there is little that I've found. If you wonder how the hell I could have done, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because it's rare that somebody my size, weight would finish the snatch test in 3 minutes and just over 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I had a minute and a half to spare in a test that often most people finish it with 1 second to spare. The reason is that when I was practicing with my 20 and 24 kilo bells a lot in high volumes, I was balancing that out with sometimes up to 100 swings with 106 pounds. Now, the 106-pound bell, again, if you don't swing it right, it's going to swing you wrong. The backswing. When you project 100 pounds into the air in front of you, and whether it goes to your waistline or your chest line, it's coming back the other way. And when your hips have to absorb 100 pounds with bare feet on the earth, swinging back toward you, and then throw it into the next rep, you learn better than anything else I've found to corkscrew yourself into that ground. The first few times you swing a 100-pound kettlebell, it's going to take you for a ride, and you better be careful. Don't try to save the bell, let go of the bell, drop it behind you, do whatever you got to do. The first few times you swing it, keep the reps beneath 5, just like your first day on the swing. and don't try to teach the bell something. All of this training I'm describing on these two shows, the kettlebell is the teacher, you are the student. Do not try to teach the kettlebell anything. It's just a block of iron, cast iron. So when you learn to deal with that 100-pound swing coming back between your legs, and you learn to embrace and deal with that shock absorption of 100 pounds moving at a fairly high rate of speed, you develop on the force plate, God knows how much strength, power, and work. And when that bell becomes half as heavy or a quarter as heavy, you'd be blown away at how fast you can swing it and how powerfully you can snatch it. I've never seen a 24-kilo bell fly from between my legs to over my head as quickly as after I started doing a lot of 106-pound swings. I was corkscrewed into the body. Because remember, it's not what you can do in any given workout, it's what you can recover from. And it's similar in the swing in that, it's not what you can throw over your head, but it's what you can embrace on the way down and throw into your next rep. And nothing will teach you that better than the 100-pound swing. So if you check out my article in the show notes, I think it's called The Quick and Dirty on Kettlebell Swings, you can understand what your standard weight is, what weight you should begin with, what weight you should be swinging. And then when it comes to just what I call heavy swings, it's anywhere from 1.5 to 2x your standard weight. Now, moving on to snatches, when you have a perfect two-hand swing, you've done adequate numbers of heavy swings, you've checked your math with the double bell swing, and you've got a really nice one-hand swing, you can start doing things like one-hand swing, snatch, one-hand swing, snatch, one-hand swing, snatch, which becomes snatch, snatch, snatch. It's good to do that because the only difference between the swing and the snatch is that the snatch ends over your head, and that is because, ladies and gentlemen, you shrugged when that bell was about to come out between your legs. If you didn't shrug, it would have been a one-arm swing, but you shrugged and redirected that bell in the vertical direction. And because you're strong and this was coordinated, your hips snapped tight and your shoulders shrugged, that bell had no choice but to redirect in the vertical direction. And when it was weightless and floating by your head, you punched like you were throwing the lightest bell in the world through the ceiling as fast as you possibly could. That's the snatch. And I would strongly recommend you guys go into the show notes and check out my Instagram post where I taught you the different drills from the snatch, which is the one-arm swing, the one-arm swing shrug, and the one-arm swing shrug punch. I think people need to do a lot of lightweight snatches before they do heavyweight snatches. When you don't have a great snatch and you do a ton of them, it will beat you up. Training for the RKC, what I love about it is that anyone can do it, but nobody can fake it. Nobody's going to walk into the RKC and pass if they haven't put in the work. It doesn't matter who you are. The snatch test requires commitment, dedication, and minimum 3 months of training. That being said, if you are in your house looking to get fit, you want to build your aerobic fitness, and you've only got an 8-kilo bell maybe, you want to learn the snatch because swinging an 8-kilo bell is going to do nothing for you because you're stronger than that. But snatching an 8-kilo bell 100 times in a single set is a terrific aerobic activity, and you're going to love it, and it's going to build a lot of strength. Stick with the foundations that I talked about in episode 1, carries, get-ups, and goblet squats. Build a foundation for your snatch with the military, strict, or overhead press, whatever you want to call it. Make sure your one-arm swing is perfect. Make sure your two-hand swing is perfect before you get into the snatch. Now, the last thing I will say is that the RKC, the people that I've actually failed on the snatch test are people that did not do the work as it relates to episode 1 of this podcast. And the number one remedy when someone comes into the RKC and fails the snatch test What do they need to work on? It's not snatching. They've done enough of that, but they tried to skip the foundation. So 9 out of 10 times when someone fails a snatch test, I tell them to do a shitload of overhead and rack carries. Rack to reinforce proper shoulder position, overhead to put it to the test. If they haven't done that, they need to. They can progress then to pressing to get even more strong and durable in the overhead position, because much of the time when you have, and then you got to do the lightweight high rep stuff to grease the groove. And when you haven't done that, and this is when I have a client, which happens sometimes, and I know one of them is listening right now, and we just had this conversation yesterday. But what's funny is when you see a decline in performance, or when like you think you could pass a snatch test and maybe you come really close, and then you're like, well, on game day I'll get it, and then on game day you don't get it, or you're great at pull-ups and then suddenly you feel like you've lost your strength in the pull-up. A lot of times that's micro trauma. So that's the body saying, yo, friend, your shoulder's got a little something going on. You don't know about it yet, but it's got some shit going on. I'm going to reduce your strength on the pull-up, or I'm going to reduce your grip strength so you can't hang as long, or I'm going to basically not give you quite as much hip extension and explosiveness because I don't want you to throw something up into the overhead position that you're not ready for or equipped for, right? So much of these declines in performance relate to the brain knowing more than you do. So don't think you know more than the brain. When you have a little bit of shoulder issue going on, or you have a lot of performance issue going on, don't think you need to spend more time mobilizing your shoulders and going through wimpy exercises to try to loosen it up. The brain is really smart. When that happens, get back to your breathing, get back to your basics, more carries, less ballistics, more get-ups, get back to the cup of water on your closed fist, get back to the goblet squat, the prying goblet squat, the bicep curl in the bottom of the goblet squat, the two-hand swing, but go back to the basics, okay? All right, guys. Well, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed this 2-part series on my favorite kettlebell exercises, and truly, I will tell you from the bottom of my heart, these are the only exercises you need. If anyone says otherwise, they probably have a program that they're trying to sell. You don't need muscle confusion. You do not need 100 different exercises. You do not need gym equipment. You don't even need a trainer. And here I am, Mr. Trainer, coach, whatever. You really don't need one. If your goal is to get strong, live long, avoid injury, have the fitness to chase your kids, feel good, feel confident, not allocate your entire existence to your fitness and spend 20 minutes each way in the way to the gym, feel like you need special clothes, iPods and bullshit, you don't need it. Get a couple of kettlebells. In the bottom of this, I'm going to write an article to help you even more in terms of choosing the proper sets of kettlebells for your unique needs. I'm going to do that. I'm committed to doing that before this episode goes live. But believe you can do this. Believe that you can get fit at home. Don't believe you need anything outside of yourself or anything besides your body and, okay, maybe a couple of kettlebells to be maximally healthy and fit for the long term. My objective here is to give you your time back, give you your energy back, so that not that you can spend more time in the gym thinking you need to be fit and healthy, but to give you that time back so that you can focus on what's really important, which is self-care, which is time with loved ones, which is meal preparation, which is research, which is reading, which is doing the things that you need to do to be your best self. Because I would say 99% of the people in the gym don't want to be there. They're there because they think they need to be. Well, if you don't need to be, and all you need to do is get a couple of kettlebells and get to work in your home. And if you need help, let me know. I'm happy to help. What can you do with all that time? What can you do with all those hours that you used to spend in the gym? Huh? Think about it. Let's do this.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. For the show notes to today's episode and every episode of Stacked, just head to coachjodi.com/stacked. And don't forget to leave us a review wherever you found this show. Every 2 weeks, we send one lucky reviewer a gift card worth $150 to kettlebellkings.com, one of my favorite websites. Good luck, and thanks for listening.